Imagine this. You walk into a room filled with people. Instantly, before a single word is spoken, something happens. Your brain is already processing subtle cues, body language, facial expressions, the energy in the space. In milliseconds, you've formed opinions, felt an emotional response, and adjusted your behavior accordingly. Now imagine the same scenario, but this time you're in a conversation, perhaps at work, on a date, or in a difficult discussion with someone you care about. What determines whether you leave that interaction feeling confident, respected, and understood, or misunderstood, frustrated, or unheard? It isn't intelligence. It isn't talent. It isn't even experience. It's emotional intelligence, the invisible force that determines how you navigate social interactions, handle challenges, and influence the people around you. And here's the kicker. Whether you realize it or not, your EQ, emotional intelligence quotient, is either working for you or against you in every single aspect of your life. It's the reason why some people effortlessly command respect, while others are ignored. It's why some leaders inspire loyalty, while others struggle to be heard. It's the reason why relationships either thrive or fall apart. It's what separates those who excel in life from those who constantly feel stuck. Now, let me ask you something uncomfortable, but important. How many opportunities have you lost simply because you didn't know how to control your emotions or read the emotions of others? How many conversations turned into conflicts? How many moments of hesitation cost you something valuable? How often have you replayed an interaction in your head thinking, "I should have said this instead"? The truth is, most people go through life reacting rather than understanding. They let their emotions drive their decisions without realizing it. They assume communication is just about words, failing to see the unspoken messages hidden in tone, expressions, and body language. They take things personally, misinterpret intentions, and allow negative emotions to dictate their behavior. But here's what they don't realize. Mastering emotional intelligence isn't just about being better with people. It's about mastering yourself. It's about knowing exactly what to say, how to say it, and, most importantly, when to say nothing at all. The science of emotional intelligence, why this matters more than ever. Before we go any further, let's clear up a major misconception. Emotional intelligence is not some vague, feel-good concept reserved for therapists and motivational speakers. It is a science-backed skill set, one that is directly tied to success in relationships, career advancement, leadership, and overall mental well-being. In fact, multiple studies have shown that EQ is a far better predictor of success than IQ. High emotional intelligence leads to stronger relationships, higher earning potential, better decision-making, and greater resilience under stress. Why? Because emotions drive everything. Your decisions, your habits, your relationships, your ability to persuade, your resilience in the face of setbacks. The part of your brain responsible for processing emotions, the limbic system, is deeply interconnected with the parts responsible for decision-making, problem-solving, and memory. This means that no matter how logical you believe yourself to be, your emotions are always influencing you in ways you may not even realize. For example, studies show that people with higher emotional intelligence earn an average of $29,000 more per year than those with lower EQ because they navigate workplace politics better, handle feedback more effectively, and lead with confidence. In relationships, couples with high emotional intelligence are far more likely to resolve conflicts constructively, creating deeper, more fulfilling connections. Leaders with high EQ are more trusted, more persuasive, and more capable of inspiring teams because they understand human motivation at its core. In everyday interactions, high EQ individuals are more socially adaptable, reading subtle cues and adjusting their approach based on what the situation demands. Now, here's the game changer. Unlike IQ, which is largely fixed, Emotional intelligence can be developed, trained, and strengthened at any point in your life. That means no matter where you are now, whether you struggle with emotional control, social anxiety, or difficult conversations, you have the ability to dramatically improve your EQ and transform how you interact with the world. What to expect from this audiobook, your roadmap to mastering EQ and social skills. This audiobook is not just about theory. It's about real practical application, giving you actionable strategies you can start using today. You won't just learn about emotional intelligence. You'll learn how to apply it to your relationships, your career, your daily interactions, and even your self-talk. Here's exactly what we'll cover. The 5 core components of emotional intelligence. We'll break down the essential pillars of EQ: self-awareness, self-regulation, motivation, empathy, and social skills. Each section will not only explain these concepts, but give you exercises and techniques to strengthen them in your daily life. How to control your emotions instead of letting them control you. You'll discover how to harness emotional intelligence in high-stress situations, preventing outbursts, overreactions, or destructive habits that sabotage your success. The psychology of influence and social intelligence. Whether you want to be more persuasive, more charismatic, or simply better at understanding others, we'll dive deep into how to read people, adapt to different personalities, and handle social dynamics with confidence. Mastering difficult conversations and conflict resolution. From workplace disagreements to personal relationships, you'll learn how to communicate effectively, de-escalate tension, and navigate tough discussions without emotional outbursts or avoidance. How to build genuine, deep connections. Whether in personal or professional settings, we'll uncover the key habits that make people instantly like, trust, and respect you, without manipulation or pretense. Practical exercises and psychological hacks. Throughout this audiobook, I'll give you powerful, easy-to-use techniques to increase self-awareness, strengthen emotional resilience, and improve your ability to connect with others. These are not abstract ideas. They are step-by-step methods designed to create real change. Your challenge. Will you continue letting emotions and social blind spots hold you back? If you're here, it's because something inside you knows there's room to grow. Maybe you've felt stuck in social situations, frustrated by your own emotional reactions, or disconnected in your relationships. Maybe you've watched others succeed in ways that felt effortless to them, but impossible to you. Whatever brought you here, know this: you are not stuck. You do not have to continue experiencing the same struggles over and over. Emotional intelligence is a trainable skill, and once you start strengthening it, the results will impact every part of your life. So as we begin, ask yourself, am I willing to break old patterns? Am I ready to take control of my emotions, my interactions, and my influence? If so, get ready, because by the time you finish this audiobook, you won't just understand emotional intelligence, you'll be living it. Now, let's dive in. Chapter 1. Why emotional intelligence is the secret to success. Think back to a time when you walked into a room, maybe at work, a family gathering, or even a social event, and instantly felt something in the air. An unspoken tension between two people, a sense of excitement buzzing through the group, or perhaps an underlying discomfort no one was acknowledging. Even without exchanging words, you sensed it. That feeling, that ability to perceive and interpret emotions beyond what is explicitly said, is emotional intelligence at work. It is what allows you to understand not just what people say, but what they mean. It is why some people naturally command attention, diffuse conflicts effortlessly, and build deep relationships, while others, despite their intelligence or expertise, struggle to connect, misread situations, or frequently find themselves in misunderstandings. If you have ever wondered why some people seem to navigate life with ease, knowing exactly what to say in difficult conversations, maintaining calm in high-pressure situations, or effortlessly making others feel comfortable, then you are already starting to see the immense power of emotional intelligence. Yet, for most of us, emotional intelligence is a concept we've heard of, but never truly examined. We spend years developing technical skills, earning degrees, and chasing career achievements. Yet the one thing that determines how successful and fulfilled we are, our ability to manage emotions, read people, and connect on a deeper level, is something we're rarely taught. And so, we stumble through life, wondering why we keep running into the same problems, conflicts that escalate instead of resolve, relationships that feel unfulfilling, conversations that go in circles, and emotions that control us instead of the other way around. The truth is, emotional intelligence is not a luxury reserved for naturally charismatic people or those with years of experience. It is a skill that anyone can learn, refine, and master, and its impact on your life is immediate and profound. Whether you want to be a better leader, improve your relationships, develop unshakable confidence, or simply feel more in control of your emotions, mastering emotional intelligence is the key. The challenge, however, is that emotional intelligence is often misunderstood. Many people mistake it for being overly agreeable, suppressing emotions, or avoiding conflict altogether. They assume that being emotionally intelligent means being nice all the time or never expressing frustration. But true emotional intelligence is not about being passive. It is about being aware, intentional, and in control. It allows you to respond instead of react, to set boundaries without guilt, and to handle difficult conversations without fear. It means understanding the difference between reacting out of impulse and responding with purpose. It gives you the tools to navigate social interactions with confidence, handle setbacks without being overwhelmed, and create deeper, more meaningful connections with others. In fact, some of the most emotionally intelligent people are also the ones who are the clearest in their communication, the firmest in their boundaries, and the most respected in their relationships. To understand why emotional intelligence is so powerful, let's step back and look at how emotions influence every decision, action, and interaction in your life. Whether we acknowledge it or not, emotions drive us. They shape the way we think, the way we behave, and the way we interpret the world around us. Consider this. Have you ever made a decision when you were angry and later regretted it? Or said something in frustration that you wished you could take back? Have you ever avoided a conversation because it felt too uncomfortable, only for the problem to get worse? These are everyday examples of how emotions, when left unchecked, dictate our actions. The problem is not that we have emotions. Emotions are natural and necessary. The problem arises when we don't know how to manage them. When emotions take control, we react instead of respond. We speak before we think. We shut down instead of expressing what we truly feel. We misinterpret others' words and intentions, assuming they mean one thing when they actually mean another. Now imagine the opposite scenario. You're in a difficult conversation, but instead of letting frustration take over, you recognize it. You pause, take a breath, and respond in a way that de-escalates the tension rather than fueling it. You walk into a meeting feeling nervous, but instead of letting that anxiety make you hesitate, you channel it into focus and clarity. You sense that a friend is upset, even though they haven't said anything, and because you recognize their emotions, you offer exactly what they need, whether it's space, support, or encouragement. These are all examples of emotional intelligence in action. The difference between reacting and responding, between being controlled by your emotions and using them as a tool, is what separates those who struggle in relationships, work, and personal growth from those who thrive. One of the most powerful things to understand about emotional intelligence is that it is not about eliminating emotions. It is about becoming fluent in them. Just like learning a new language allows you to express yourself more clearly, learning emotional intelligence allows you to understand yourself and others with greater depth. And just like any other skill, it requires practice. Think of it like a muscle. The more you train it, the stronger it becomes. You don't build emotional intelligence overnight, but every small step you take adds up to a massive transformation. The first step is awareness, recognizing that emotions are constantly at play in your life and that learning to understand them is the foundation of everything else. Consider for a moment the people you admire, whether they are leaders, friends, mentors, or colleagues. What makes them stand out? Is it just their intelligence or expertise? Or is it the way they make others feel heard and valued? Is it their ability to stay composed under pressure? Their skill in resolving conflicts with clarity? Their presence? The way they command respect without demanding it? These are all hallmarks of emotional intelligence. The good news is that none of this is out of reach. It's not about being naturally gifted. It's about learning the right tools, practicing them daily, and making emotional intelligence a way of life. So, where do we begin? In the next sections of this chapter, we will break down the 4 core components of emotional intelligence: self-awareness, self-management, social awareness, and relationship management. Each of these plays a critical role in shaping how we think, feel, and interact with the world. You will learn how to recognize your emotional patterns, manage your reactions, read people with accuracy, and build stronger, more fulfilling relationships. But before we move forward, take a moment to reflect. How often do you allow emotions to drive your decisions? How often do you misinterpret someone else's intentions? How much control do you feel you have over your own emotional state? Becoming aware of these questions is the first step toward growth. Mastering emotional intelligence is not about perfection. It is about progress. It is about becoming more attuned to yourself and others, making small but meaningful changes in the way you think and communicate, and ultimately creating a life where you feel more in control, more connected, and more fulfilled. This journey is one of the most valuable investments you can make in yourself, and by the time you finish this audiobook, you will not only understand emotional intelligence, you will embody it. Chapter 2: The Hidden Forces Shaping Your Emotional Intelligence. From the moment you wake up to the second you fall asleep, emotions shape your thoughts, decisions, and interactions in ways you might not even realize. Consider a typical day. You check your phone first thing in the morning and see an email that frustrates you. Before you've even stepped out of bed, your mood shifts. Maybe it's disappointment, annoyance, or stress creeping in, and suddenly, your morning feels different. You grab your coffee, and someone cuts you off in traffic. You feel a flash of irritation, maybe even anger. And for the next few minutes, you're mentally replaying the moment, shaking your head at their rudeness. You get to work, sit through a meeting, and notice how someone barely acknowledges your input. Was it intentional? Are they dismissing you? Now there's a lingering self-doubt in the back of your mind, and it subtly changes the way you interact with others throughout the day. Every single one of these moments is a reflection of emotional intelligence at play, either its presence or its absence. Emotional intelligence determines how quickly you shake off frustration, whether you take things personally, how well you read people's behavior, and how you manage the way emotions guide your decision-making. The issue is, most of us don't even notice this process happening in real time. We think our thoughts and reactions are natural, that they just happen. But in reality, they are shaped by deeply ingrained emotional patterns, many of which we aren't even aware of. The way you handle setbacks, the way you react to criticism, the way you interpret other people's words and actions, these are all habits formed over time, influenced by your upbringing, past experiences, and even cultural conditioning. And unless you consciously examine these patterns, they will continue to define how you move through life, often without your permission. To truly master emotional intelligence, the first and most crucial step is awareness. You cannot change what you do not see. Imagine if every time you felt frustration or stress, you could pause, recognize what was happening internally, and choose a better response instead of being swept up in emotion. That level of awareness is what separates those who control their emotions from those who are controlled by them. It is the difference between a person who loses their temper and regrets it later and someone who channels their frustration into constructive action. It is what allows someone to see beyond their initial reaction, whether it's defensiveness, irritation, or sadness, and make a choice that aligns with their long-term goals rather than their immediate feelings. But why do so many people struggle with emotional awareness? The answer is simple. From an early age, most of us are not taught how to recognize, process, or regulate our emotions effectively. Instead, we develop coping mechanisms based on what we observe in our environments. If you grew up in a household where emotions were dismissed or invalidated, you may have learned to suppress your feelings rather than process them. If you were surrounded by people who reacted aggressively to conflict, you may have absorbed the idea that emotions should be expressed through anger or defensiveness. If you were taught that certain emotions, like sadness or vulnerability, are signs of weakness, you may have conditioned yourself to avoid them at all costs. These subconscious beliefs don't just disappear as we grow older. They shape our emotional responses well into adulthood, dictating how we handle relationships, stress, and even success. Think about your own emotional habits for a moment. When you're overwhelmed, do you withdraw or lash out? When someone disagrees with you, do you listen or immediately get defensive? When you make a mistake, do you criticize yourself endlessly, or do you learn from it and move on? These patterns did not develop overnight, and they won't change overnight, but recognizing them is the first step. Emotional intelligence begins with understanding your emotional blueprint, the unique set of beliefs, habits, and reactions that shape your daily interactions. It requires you to ask yourself difficult but necessary questions. Where did I learn this response? Is it helping me or holding me back? What would a more emotionally intelligent response look like in this situation? One of the most important realizations you can have about emotional intelligence is that it does not mean eliminating emotions. It means understanding them so well that they no longer control you. Imagine you're in a heated argument and you feel the urge to raise your voice, to prove your point, to make the other person see your perspective. But instead of reacting impulsively, you pause. You recognize the anger bubbling up inside you, and instead of letting it dictate your response, you take control. You slow your breathing. You analyze the situation from a broader perspective, and you choose words that de-escalate rather than intensify the conflict. This is what separates emotionally intelligent individuals from those who let emotions rule them. Awareness, control, and choice. The good news is that emotional intelligence is not fixed. It is a skill that can be developed, strengthened, and refined. The more you practice self-awareness, the easier it becomes. The more you train yourself to regulate your emotional responses, the more natural it feels. And as you sharpen your ability to read and understand others, your relationships, both personal and professional, begin to transform. People with high emotional intelligence have an almost magnetic quality. They make others feel heard and understood. They navigate conflict with ease, and they bring out the best in those around them. But this is not magic. It is a skill set that you too can cultivate. To start, one of the most effective exercises for increasing emotional awareness is to track your emotional triggers. Over the next few days, pay close attention to the moments when your emotions intensify. What situations make you anxious? What conversations leave you feeling defensive? What interactions drain your energy, and which ones uplift you? The goal is not to judge these emotions, but to recognize the patterns. If you find yourself frequently irritated in certain situations, ask yourself, what is really triggering this response? Is it the situation itself? Or is it an unresolved emotional belief that I carry? For example, if criticism makes you unusually defensive, is it because the words were unfair? Or is it because deep down, you associate criticism with failure? These subtle but powerful realizations are what allow you to rewrite your emotional script. Understanding your emotions is just the beginning. The next step is learning how to manage them effectively. Many people assume that controlling emotions means suppressing them, but the opposite is true. Emotional intelligence is about processing emotions in a way that allows you to respond wisely instead of reacting impulsively. This means developing coping mechanisms that help you regulate your emotional state, whether it's through mindfulness, reframing your perspective, or consciously shifting your focus. It also means learning to rewire the way you interpret situations so that emotions do not dictate your actions. As we move forward in this chapter, we will explore the 4 core components of emotional intelligence: self-awareness, self-management, social awareness, and relationship management. These are the building blocks that will allow you to master not just your own emotions, but also the emotions of those around you. Each of these elements plays a crucial role in shaping your personal and professional success, and understanding them will allow you to take complete control of the way you interact with the world. But before we get into the practical strategies, take a moment to reflect on everything we've discussed so far. How aware are you of your emotional triggers? Do you feel like your emotions control you, or do you control them? What emotional habits have shaped your life, and are they serving you or limiting you? These are the questions that will lay the foundation for your journey toward mastering emotional intelligence. And as we continue, you will discover just how much power you have to change the way you think, feel, and connect with others. Chapter 3: The 4 Pillars of Emotional Intelligence, Breaking Down the Blueprint. If you have ever wondered why some people remain calm in the face of pressure, while others spiral into anxiety, or why certain individuals command respect in every interaction, while others struggle to be heard, the answer lies in 4 distinct but interconnected components of emotional intelligence. These 4 pillars: self-awareness, self-management, social awareness, and relationship management, serve as the foundation for mastering your emotions, navigating relationships with ease, and cultivating a presence that draws people toward you. The ability to understand yourself, regulate your reactions, interpret others' emotions, and manage social dynamics is not just a skill. It is a superpower that shapes your personal and professional success. Each of these pillars plays a crucial role in determining how you interact with the world, and once you fully grasp them, you will begin to see how they influence every conversation, every decision, and every relationship in your life. Self-awareness: the power of recognizing your own emotions. Imagine waking up in the morning and feeling an inexplicable sense of frustration. You go through your routine, but everything seems slightly off. Your patience is thinner than usual. Small inconveniences feel amplified, and your interactions with others feel slightly strained. Without self-awareness, you might push through the day, attributing your mood to external circumstances without questioning its source. But a person with high emotional intelligence would pause, reflect, and ask, "What exactly am I feeling, and why?" Perhaps the frustration stems from unresolved stress about an upcoming deadline, or maybe it lingers from an unsettling conversation the night before. Instead of letting the emotion dictate your day, self-awareness allows you to acknowledge it, understand it, and prevent it from influencing your actions in unconscious ways. Self-awareness is the ability to recognize and understand your own emotions as they arise. It is the foundation upon which all other aspects of emotional intelligence are built. Without it, you move through life reacting to situations rather than responding to them with intention. People with low self-awareness often find themselves caught in repeating cycles of frustration, conflict, or self-doubt because they fail to recognize the underlying emotional patterns driving their behavior. They might lash out in anger without realizing that their true emotion is fear or insecurity. They might avoid confrontation without recognizing that their discomfort stems from childhood experiences where expressing disagreement felt unsafe. Without self-awareness, emotions become puppeteers, pulling the strings of your actions from behind the scenes, and you remain powerless to change them. Developing self-awareness requires a commitment to introspection. It means paying attention to how you feel in different situations, noticing recurring emotional triggers, and understanding how your past experiences shape your present reactions. One of the most effective ways to build self-awareness is through emotional labeling, the practice of naming your emotions as they arise. Instead of saying, "I feel bad today," you specify, "Am I feeling anxious, overwhelmed, disappointed, resentful?" By giving emotions precise labels, you remove their ambiguity and gain clarity over what you are actually experiencing. The next step is tracing those emotions back to their roots. If you feel anxious, ask yourself, is this anxiety coming from something real in the present moment? Or is it an echo of past fears? When you become skilled at recognizing your emotions, you gain the power to shift them rather than be controlled by them. Self-management, mastering your emotional reactions. If self-awareness is about recognizing your emotions, self-management is about regulating them. It is the ability to control impulsive reactions, navigate stress effectively, and stay composed under pressure. Many people mistakenly believe that emotional intelligence means suppressing emotions, but in reality, it is about processing them in a way that prevents them from hijacking your decision-making. Consider a scenario where you receive negative feedback at work. If your self-management is weak, you might immediately become defensive, interpret the criticism as a personal attack, and let resentment simmer. But with strong self-management, you take a step back, recognize the initial wave of emotion, and choose a response that aligns with your long-term goals. Instead of reacting impulsively, you ask yourself, what can I learn from this feedback? How can I use it to improve? The key to effective self-management is emotional regulation, which involves developing techniques to calm your nervous system and maintain emotional balance. One of the most powerful tools for self-regulation is cognitive reframing, the practice of changing the way you interpret a situation. Imagine being stuck in traffic. Someone with poor self-management might allow frustration to build, thinking, "This is a waste of my time. I hate this." But someone skilled in self-regulation would reframe the situation thinking, "This is an opportunity to listen to a podcast or reflect on my day." The circumstances are the same, but the emotional experience is vastly different. Another crucial aspect of self-management is delayed response, the ability to pause before reacting. In emotionally charged situations, the difference between an impulsive reaction and a thoughtful response can change the outcome entirely. When faced with a trigger, train yourself to pause and ask, "Is my emotional reaction aligned with the outcome I want?" This simple practice can prevent arguments from escalating, prevent words you'll regret, and help you make decisions that serve your best interests. Social awareness, reading people like an open book. While self-awareness and self-management focus on understanding and regulating your own emotions, social awareness shifts the focus outward. It is the ability to accurately read and interpret the emotions of others. Imagine you are in a conversation with a friend who insists they are fine, but you notice subtle changes in their tone, posture, and facial expressions that suggest otherwise. A person with high social awareness picks up on these cues, recognizing that what is left unsaid is often just as important as what is spoken. They sense underlying tensions in meetings, understand when someone needs support, even when they don't ask for it, and adapt their communication style based on the emotions of those around them. At its core, Social awareness is about empathy, the ability to step into someone else's perspective and understand their emotional experience. Developing this skill requires deep listening, not just to words, but to body language, tone, and unspoken emotions. One of the most effective exercises for enhancing social awareness is observational listening, a practice where you focus entirely on the other person, setting aside your internal dialogue and preconceived responses. Instead of thinking about what you'll say next, you fully absorb what they are expressing, paying attention to shifts in their facial expressions, voice, and energy. The more you practice this, the more attuned you become to the emotions of others, allowing you to navigate social interactions with greater precision. Relationship management. Building stronger, more meaningful connections. The final pillar of emotional intelligence is relationship management, the ability to cultivate healthy, meaningful interactions based on trust, mutual understanding, and clear communication. It is what allows you to handle difficult conversations with grace, resolve conflicts without escalation, and foster deep connections with others. At its core, relationship management is about aligning your communication with emotional intelligence, expressing yourself in a way that is both honest and constructive. This means being able to provide feedback without making the other person feel attacked, setting boundaries without guilt, and recognizing when to lead with assertion and when to listen with empathy. A crucial element of relationship management is conflict resolution, the skill of de-escalating tensions before they spiral into unnecessary arguments. Emotionally intelligent individuals understand that conflict is not about proving who is right, but about finding solutions that respect both perspectives. They approach disagreements with curiosity rather than defensiveness, asking, "What is this person feeling? And what do they need to feel heard?" This shift in perspective transforms the way conflicts unfold, leading to resolutions that strengthen rather than damage relationships. Chapter 4. The Science of Emotional Mastery: How Your Brain Controls Your Reactions. Emotions feel deeply personal, almost like an intangible force within us, shaping how we experience the world. However, at their core, emotions are neither mystical nor arbitrary. They are deeply rooted in neuroscience. Every feeling you experience, from joy to frustration, from confidence to self-doubt, is the result of an intricate dance of chemicals, neural pathways, and subconscious conditioning in your brain. And yet, despite how powerful these emotional forces may feel, they are not beyond your control. The key to mastering emotional intelligence is understanding how your brain processes emotions in real time, and more importantly, learning how to influence this process rather than being passively shaped by it. Once you grasp how emotions originate, how they hijack your thoughts, and how they can be rewired, you unlock the ability to take full command of your emotional state, rather than being at its mercy. At the heart of emotional intelligence lies a battle between two key regions of your brain: the amygdala and the prefrontal cortex. The amygdala, an almond-shaped cluster of neurons deep within your brain's limbic system, is responsible for processing emotions, particularly fear, anger, and stress. It is your brain's built-in alarm system, designed for survival, instantly triggering the fight, flight, or freeze response when it perceives danger. In ancient times, this was essential. If a predator appeared, your amygdala would instantly flood your body with adrenaline and cortisol, heightening your senses, increasing your heart rate, and preparing you to either fight or flee. The problem? In modern life, this same ancient system is constantly being activated by non-life-threatening situations. An email that upsets you, an argument with a loved one, or even self-doubt creeping in before a big presentation. The amygdala does not differentiate between a real physical threat and a perceived emotional one, which is why people so often feel emotionally hijacked, overreacting to situations, getting stuck in negative thought loops, or letting small frustrations escalate into overwhelming stress. On the other hand, the prefrontal cortex, the rational, logical part of your brain, has the power to regulate the amygdala. This region is responsible for higher-order thinking, problem-solving, decision-making, and emotional regulation. When your prefrontal cortex is active, it helps you interpret situations with greater clarity, control impulsive reactions, and choose your responses deliberately rather than emotionally. The stronger your prefrontal cortex, the greater your ability to override emotional impulses and prevent your amygdala from dictating your actions. However, stress, exhaustion, and overwhelming emotions weaken the prefrontal cortex's ability to function effectively, allowing the amygdala to take over, leading to reactive, irrational, or even destructive behavior. This is why people say things they later regret in heated moments. Why anxiety can feel overpowering even when the situation is objectively manageable, and why impulsive decisions often lead to negative outcomes. Your brain is constantly in a tug-of-war between the amygdala's instinctive reactions and the prefrontal cortex's ability to regulate them. Emotional intelligence, at its core, is the ability to strengthen the prefrontal cortex and train it to take control more often, rather than allowing the amygdala to hijack your emotions. The good news? This is a skill you can develop through intentional practice, self-awareness, and specific mental exercises that rewire your emotional responses over time. One of the most powerful techniques for strengthening your emotional regulation is pattern interruption. Your brain operates in habitual loops. When faced with an emotional trigger, it automatically defaults to a familiar reaction. If someone criticizes you, your default response might be defensiveness. If you encounter a setback, your instinct might be self-doubt or frustration. These reactions occur because your brain has reinforced these patterns over time, making them the automatic response. However, if you train yourself to pause and interrupt the pattern, you create a moment of cognitive flexibility that allows your prefrontal cortex to step in before your amygdala takes over. For example, imagine you receive an email that irritates you. Your habitual response might be to fire back an equally frustrated reply, but if you catch yourself in the moment and take 10 slow, deliberate breaths, you interrupt the habitual emotional cycle. This small pause gives your prefrontal cortex time to process the situation more rationally, allowing you to choose a more constructive response rather than reacting impulsively. Over time, practicing pattern interruption strengthens the neural pathways that favor logical, deliberate responses over emotional reactivity, making emotional self-control second nature. Another crucial technique for emotional regulation is cognitive reframing, the practice of changing the way you interpret events rather than simply reacting to them. Your emotions are not caused by events themselves, but rather by the meaning you attach to them. If someone ignores your message, you might instinctively assume they are dismissing you, leading to frustration or insecurity. But if you reframe the situation and consider alternative explanations, perhaps they are simply busy, distracted, or dealing with their own challenges, your emotional reaction changes. Cognitive reframing allows you to take control of your emotional responses by consciously choosing interpretations that reduce stress, promote understanding, and prevent unnecessary emotional suffering. Neuroscientists have discovered that repeated cognitive reframing can physically reshape the brain. Each time you consciously reframe a negative situation, you weaken the old neural connections that default to stress, anxiety, or anger, and strengthen new pathways that promote resilience, calmness, and rational thinking. This process, known as neuroplasticity, proves that emotional intelligence is not a fixed trait. It is a trainable skill, and the more you practice it, the more natural it becomes. Another fundamental practice for emotional mastery is mindful self-awareness, the ability to observe your emotions without being consumed by them. Most people are completely identified with their emotions. They do not realize that they are separate from their feelings. They say, "I am angry," rather than, "I am experiencing anger." This subtle shift in language is profound. When you recognize that emotions are temporary states rather than permanent identities, you create a mental space that allows you to process them objectively rather than being overwhelmed by them. Mindfulness meditation is one of the most powerful tools for strengthening self-awareness and emotional regulation. By practicing mindfulness daily, focusing on your breath, observing your thoughts without judgment, and training yourself to detach from fleeting emotions, you strengthen the neural pathways that promote calmness, emotional stability, and mental clarity. Studies show that individuals who practice mindfulness experience lower levels of stress, greater emotional resilience, and improved decision-making abilities, all of which are key markers of high emotional intelligence. Ultimately, the science of emotional intelligence is clear. Your emotions are not fixed, uncontrollable forces. They are the result of specific brain mechanisms that can be understood, trained, and reshaped. By practicing pattern interruption, cognitive reframing, and mindful self-awareness, you take control of these mechanisms and reprogram the way you respond to life's challenges. Over time, emotional mastery becomes your default state, not because you suppress emotions, but because you understand them so well that they no longer dictate your behavior in ways that do not serve you. This is the essence of emotional intelligence, not eliminating emotions, but learning to master them so that they work for you rather than against you. Chapter 5. The emotional triggers that control you. How to rewire deeply ingrained reactions. If there is one universal truth about human emotion, it is that we are all controlled by invisible triggers, far more than we realize. Emotional triggers are like buried landmines, sitting beneath the surface of our consciousness, waiting to be set off by the right circumstances. One moment, you might feel calm, rational, and fully in control, and the next, a seemingly small event, a comment from a friend, a disapproving glance, a mistake at work, sends you spiraling into anger, frustration, or anxiety. If you have ever reacted to a situation in a way that felt disproportionate to the actual event, it was likely because a deep-seated emotional trigger had been activated. These triggers, which stem from past experiences, subconscious fears, and unresolved emotions, often dictate how we feel, think, and act without us even realizing it. The problem is that when you are unaware of your triggers, they control you. You become trapped in emotional cycles that feel impossible to break, repeating the same patterns of reaction over and over again. But the good news is this: you do not have to remain a prisoner of your emotional triggers. You can rewire them, neutralize their power, and take back control of your emotional responses. The first step to mastering your triggers is recognizing where they come from. Every emotional trigger has a root cause, usually linked to an early experience that shaped the way you interpret certain situations. These experiences, whether from childhood, past relationships, or even workplace interactions, create emotional imprints that dictate how you respond to similar situations in the future. For example, if you grew up in an environment where expressing your opinions was met with criticism, you may have developed a subconscious trigger around feeling dismissed or unheard. As an adult, if someone interrupts you in a meeting, you might feel an intense surge of frustration or self-doubt, not necessarily because of the interruption itself, but because it activates the old wound of feeling unheard. Similarly, if you once experienced betrayal in a close relationship, you may develop a hypersensitivity to signs of dishonesty, reacting with disproportionate suspicion, even in situations where there is no real evidence of deceit. These triggers are not logical. They are emotional echoes of past experiences, replaying in the present moment. One of the most powerful exercises for uncovering your emotional triggers is reverse engineering your reactions. Anytime you have an emotional response that feels intense, immediate, or difficult to control, take a step back and ask yourself, what exactly am I feeling? What event triggered this response? And does this remind me of something from my past? This process of introspection helps you identify the patterns behind your triggers, revealing their origins and making them easier to recognize in the future. The key here is to be radically honest with yourself. Most people avoid examining their triggers because it forces them to confront uncomfortable truths about their past. But the more willing you are to face these patterns head-on, the more power you gain over them. Once you have identified your triggers, the next step is to disarm them. The reason emotional triggers feel so powerful is because they activate the amygdala's threat response, making you feel as though you are in danger, even when you are not. Your nervous system treats emotional pain the same way it treats physical pain, which is why your body reacts as if you are under attack when a deep-seated trigger is activated. The key to breaking this cycle is teaching your brain that these triggers are not actual threats. One of the most effective ways to do this is through exposure and reprocessing. Each time you notice a trigger being activated, instead of reacting immediately, pause and observe the emotion without engaging with it. Imagine stepping outside of yourself and watching your emotional reaction as if it were happening to someone else. This technique, known as detached observation, allows you to separate yourself from the trigger, creating psychological distance between the stimulus and your response. For example, if your trigger is feeling ignored and someone does not respond to your message, your usual response might be irritation, insecurity, or resentment. But instead of reacting in the moment, pause and say to yourself, I recognize that this is triggering my fear of being unimportant, but I also know that this situation is not the same as my past experiences. By labeling and acknowledging the trigger, rather than being consumed by it, you start weakening the neural connection that reinforces the emotional response. Over time, this practice trains your brain to detach from emotional triggers rather than be controlled by them, allowing you to respond with intention rather than reaction. Another powerful technique for rewiring emotional triggers is cognitive restructuring, a process that involves changing the way your brain interprets triggering situations. Since emotional triggers are fueled by the meanings you attach to events, shifting your perspective removes their power. Let's say your trigger is criticism. Whenever someone offers feedback, you immediately feel defensive or attacked. Instead of viewing criticism as a sign of failure, practice reframing it as an opportunity for growth. Ask yourself, is this criticism actually a personal attack, or is it constructive? What can I learn from it? How would a confident person receive this feedback? This mental shift rewires your brain's automatic response, allowing you to engage with previously triggering situations in a way that feels empowering rather than threatening. One of the biggest mistakes people make when dealing with emotional triggers is trying to suppress them rather than reprogram them. Suppressing emotions does not make them disappear. It only pushes them deeper into your subconscious, where they continue to shape your reactions in ways you cannot control. The only way to truly neutralize a trigger is to bring it into conscious awareness, examine it with curiosity rather than judgment, and gradually reshape the way you respond to it. This process requires patience, but the long-term results are profound. When you successfully rewire your emotional triggers, you free yourself from the cycles of reactive behavior that once held you back, allowing you to navigate life's challenges with greater confidence, clarity, and resilience. Ultimately, the key to emotional intelligence is self-mastery, the ability to understand, regulate, and reframe your emotions in a way that serves your highest potential. Your emotional triggers do not have to define you. You have the power to change the way you respond to them, to rewire your brain's emotional habits, and to create a life where you are in control of your emotions, rather than being controlled by them. This is the essence of emotional mastery. Not the absence of emotion, but the ability to engage with emotion in a way that strengthens, rather than weakens you. Chapter 6. The Role of Self-Talk, Reprogramming the Voice Inside Your Head. There is a voice inside your head that never stops talking. It narrates your life, comments on your choices, and shapes the way you see yourself and the world. This inner voice is your self-talk, and whether you realize it or not, it has more influence over your emotions, confidence, and overall well-being than almost anything else. The words you say to yourself in moments of doubt, stress, or challenge determine how you feel, how you respond, and ultimately, who you become. Yet for most people, this inner voice is not a source of encouragement or wisdom. It is a constant stream of negativity, self-criticism, and fear. Think about it. How do you talk to yourself when you make a mistake? Do you offer yourself the same understanding and encouragement that you would give a friend? Or do you immediately launch into harsh self-judgment? If you are like most people, your self-talk is far more critical than it is kind. You may find yourself saying things like, "I always mess things up," "I'll never be good enough," or "No one takes me seriously." These thoughts feel automatic, almost like background noise, but they are not harmless. They are deeply ingrained mental programs that shape your identity, reinforce emotional patterns, and dictate the way you engage with life. The science behind self-talk is clear. Your brain believes what you tell it most often. When you repeat a thought, whether positive or negative, you strengthen the neural pathways that support that belief. If your inner dialogue is filled with self-doubt and negativity, you train your brain to expect failure, rejection, and disappointment. Over time, these thoughts become your reality, not because they are objectively true, but because your mind is constantly seeking evidence to confirm them. This is known as confirmation bias, the tendency to interpret situations in a way that aligns with your existing beliefs. If you believe you are socially awkward, for example, your brain will hyperfocus on moments of perceived awkwardness, reinforcing the idea that you struggle in social situations. You might completely overlook the times when you engaged confidently, simply because they do not fit the narrative your mind has been programmed to believe. On the flip side, when you consciously shift your self-talk, you rewire your brain in a way that transforms your emotional landscape. Research in neuroplasticity has shown that intentionally changing your thought patterns can physically reshape the brain, weakening old negative pathways and strengthening new, more empowering ones. This means that no matter how deeply ingrained your negative self-talk may be, it is not permanent. You have the power to reprogram your inner dialogue and, in doing so, fundamentally change the way you experience life. The first step to transforming your self-talk is awareness. Most people are so accustomed to their internal dialogue that they do not even recognize when they are engaging in negative self-talk. The key is to start observing your thoughts without judgment, like a scientist studying a subject. Throughout your day, pay attention to the words you say to yourself, especially in moments of difficulty. Do you call yourself lazy when you procrastinate? Do you label yourself as not good enough when you face a challenge? Do you mentally replay past mistakes, reinforcing the belief that you are incapable or unworthy? These thoughts may seem insignificant in the moment, but over time, they shape your emotional patterns, your confidence, and even your ability to achieve your goals. One of the most effective techniques for breaking free from negative self-talk is thought replacement. Every time you catch yourself engaging in self-criticism, immediately replace the negative thought with a more empowering one. This does not mean lying to yourself or pretending that challenges do not exist. It means shifting your perspective in a way that supports growth rather than self-destruction. For example, instead of thinking, "I always fail at this," reframe the thought as, "I'm learning and improving with every attempt." Instead of saying, "I'm just not good at socializing," try, "I'm developing stronger communication skills every day." This small shift in language may seem minor, but over time, it rewires your brain's default response, making self-encouragement the norm rather than self-criticism. Another powerful strategy for reshaping self-talk is personalized affirmations. While affirmations are often misunderstood as vague, feel-good statements, When done correctly, they serve as mental reconditioning tools that rewire deeply ingrained beliefs. The key is to create affirmations that feel authentic and believable rather than empty or exaggerated. If you struggle with confidence, instead of saying, "I am extremely confident in all situations," which might feel unrealistic, start with, "I am developing confidence every day, and I handle challenges with increasing ease." The more you repeat these affirmations, especially out loud, the more your brain begins to accept them as truth, replacing old limiting beliefs with new empowering ones. But words alone are not enough. Your self-talk must be backed by action. If you tell yourself, "I am becoming more confident," but never take steps to develop confidence, your mind will reject the statement as false. However, if you combine positive self-talk with small tangible actions, the new belief solidifies. For example, if your affirmation is, "I am improving my communication skills," follow it up by practicing speaking in social situations, engaging in meaningful conversations, or seeking out opportunities to express yourself. These small actions validate the new belief, making it more deeply embedded in your subconscious. Another key component of self-talk mastery is self-compassion. Many people believe that being hard on themselves will motivate them to do better, but research has shown the opposite to be true. Self-criticism triggers the brain's stress response, releasing cortisol and making it harder to think clearly, take risks, or stay motivated. In contrast, self-compassion activates the brain's reward system, increasing dopamine levels and reinforcing positive behavior. This means that when you treat yourself with kindness, even in moments of failure, you create an internal environment that supports growth rather than paralyzing you with fear. If you make a mistake, instead of saying, "I'm so stupid," practice self-compassion by thinking, "I made a mistake, but I am learning and I can improve." This simple shift in perspective creates a resilient mindset, allowing you to move forward rather than becoming stuck in self-judgment. Ultimately, your self-talk is the foundation of your emotional intelligence. It determines how you handle challenges, how you view yourself, and how you interact with the world. The good news is that no matter how negative or limiting your current inner dialogue may be, you have the power to change it. By becoming aware of your thoughts, replacing negative patterns with empowering ones, and reinforcing new beliefs through action, you can completely transform the way you think, feel, and respond to life's challenges. This is the true power of emotional intelligence, not just managing your emotions, but actively reshaping your internal world to support your growth, confidence, and success. Chapter 7: Mastering Emotional Agility. How to adapt and thrive in any situation. Emotional intelligence is not about suppressing emotions or pretending to be unaffected by life's challenges. It is about agility, the ability to adapt to different emotional states, process them effectively, and respond in a way that aligns with your long-term goals and values. Life is unpredictable. No matter how much control you try to exert, things will go wrong. You will encounter conflict, setbacks, and disappointments. You will face criticism, rejection, and moments of doubt. The difference between those who crumble under emotional pressure and those who rise stronger is not the absence of emotion. It is their ability to move through emotions fluidly without becoming trapped by them. At its core, emotional agility is about flexibility. Many people live their lives stuck in rigid emotional patterns. If they experience rejection, they automatically withdraw. If they feel anxious, they assume something is wrong and try to escape it. If they make a mistake, they immediately spiral into self-judgment. These automatic responses are not conscious choices. They are deeply ingrained habits formed over years of conditioning. The problem with emotional rigidity is that it leaves no room for growth. When you are locked into fixed emotional reactions, you become predictable, not only to others, but also to yourself. You repeat the same patterns, make the same mistakes, and wonder why nothing ever changes. Emotional agility is the key to breaking free from these cycles, allowing you to navigate life with resilience, adaptability, and inner strength. The first step in developing emotional agility is accepting emotions without judgment. Most people operate under the belief that certain emotions are good and others are bad. Happiness, confidence, and excitement are seen as positive, while anger, sadness, and fear are labeled as negative. This black and white thinking creates an unhealthy relationship with emotion, causing people to resist or suppress feelings that are perceived as undesirable. The truth is that every emotion serves a purpose. Anger signals that a boundary has been crossed. Sadness encourages reflection and healing. Fear sharpens focus and prepares the body for action. When you resist emotions, you do not eliminate them. You simply push them into your subconscious, where they continue to influence your behavior in ways you do not realize. The key to emotional agility is to allow emotions to exist without being consumed by them. One powerful technique for cultivating emotional agility is naming your emotions with precision. Studies have shown that simply identifying an emotion, rather than being overwhelmed by it, reduces its intensity. Most people use vague or exaggerated language to describe their feelings. They say, "I'm stressed," when they are actually feeling unprepared. They say, "I'm angry," when they are actually feeling disrespected. They say, "I'm anxious," when they are actually feeling uncertain about an outcome. The more precise you are in labeling emotions, the more control you gain over them. Instead of saying, "I feel awful," try identifying the specific emotion. "I feel frustrated because I don't feel heard in this conversation." Instead of saying, "I'm anxious," try, "I feel uncertain about how this situation will turn out, and my brain is preparing me for potential challenges." This shift in language creates a psychological buffer between you and the emotion, preventing you from being completely consumed by it. The next step in developing emotional agility is creating space between emotion and action. Most people react to emotions immediately, without pausing to assess whether their response aligns with their goals. Someone criticizes them, and they lash out defensively. They feel nervous, and they avoid the situation. They feel insecure, and they shrink themselves to avoid judgment. These impulsive reactions are the enemy of emotional intelligence. The key is to create a pause between feeling and acting, a moment of reflection where you consciously decide how to respond. This technique, known as the psychological pause, is a fundamental skill in emotional mastery. The next time you experience a strong emotion, instead of reacting impulsively, take a deep breath and ask yourself, "What is this emotion trying to tell me? What action would serve me best in this moment?" By introducing this moment of reflection, you shift from being controlled by emotions to using emotions as a tool for intentional action. Another critical component of emotional agility is reframing your relationship with discomfort. Growth does not happen in comfort zones. If you want to develop emotional intelligence, you must learn to sit with discomfort rather than run from it. Many people avoid situations that trigger uncomfortable emotions, whether it is public speaking, difficult conversations, or personal vulnerability. But avoidance reinforces emotional rigidity. The more you avoid discomfort, the more power it has over you. The most successful people in any field, leaders, athletes, artists, entrepreneurs, are not the ones who never feel fear, doubt, or frustration. They are the ones who lean into discomfort, using it as a catalyst for growth rather than a reason to retreat. Instead of avoiding difficult emotions, ask yourself, what can this discomfort teach me? How can I use this feeling as fuel for growth? By shifting your mindset, you turn emotional discomfort into an opportunity for personal evolution. One of the biggest misconceptions about emotional agility is that it means staying calm in all situations. This is not true. Emotional intelligence is not about eliminating strong emotions. It is about experiencing emotions fully while remaining in control of your responses. There will be moments in life where anger is appropriate, where sadness needs to be felt, where fear serves as a valuable guide. The goal is not to suppress or eliminate these emotions, but to engage with them in a way that serves you rather than controls you. A practical strategy for strengthening emotional agility is mental contrasting, the process of envisioning both the challenges and successes of a situation. Many people use only positive visualization, imagining success while ignoring obstacles. While optimism is valuable, research shows that combining positive vision with realistic challenges leads to better outcomes. For example, if you are preparing for an important conversation, instead of just imagining it going perfectly, also visualize potential difficulties, how the other person might react, what emotions might arise, and how you will handle them. This mental rehearsal trains your brain to stay adaptable and composed, reducing the likelihood of being thrown off by unexpected challenges. Ultimately, emotional agility is about owning your emotions, rather than being owned by them. It is the difference between being controlled by old patterns and choosing new, empowering responses. It is the skill that allows you to navigate life's ups and downs with confidence, knowing that no matter what happens, you have the tools to adapt, respond, and thrive. Emotional agility does not mean being unaffected by life's challenges. It means meeting them with strength, flexibility, and an unshakable sense of inner control. This is emotional intelligence in its highest form, not the absence of emotion, but the mastery of it. Chapter 8: The Hidden Power of Emotional Triggers. How to break free from automatic reactions. There are moments in life when emotions seem to take over completely, hijacking your ability to think rationally, communicate effectively, or make sound decisions. You might find yourself suddenly overwhelmed with anger in a conversation, withdrawing into silence when faced with conflict, or experiencing a rush of insecurity in social situations. These reactions often feel automatic, as if they are happening to you rather than being chosen by you. They are not conscious decisions, but deeply ingrained patterns triggered by specific situations, words, or people. These moments, where your emotions seem to explode out of nowhere, are called emotional triggers, and they hold the key to unlocking deeper self-awareness and emotional mastery. Understanding emotional triggers is one of the most powerful steps toward developing emotional intelligence. A trigger is anything: an event, a comment, a facial expression, a tone of voice that sets off a strong emotional response, often disproportionate to the situation itself. The intensity of the reaction is what makes triggers different from ordinary emotions. A mild disagreement may turn into an explosive argument. A simple piece of feedback might feel like a personal attack. A minor inconvenience can cause overwhelming frustration. In these moments, the logical part of your brain shuts down and your emotions take full control. You are no longer responding to the present reality. You are reacting to something deeper, something unresolved within you. Most triggers are rooted in past experiences, especially those that left a lasting emotional imprint. When something in the present moment resembles a past wound, your brain interprets it as a threat, activating the same fight-or-flight response that was formed during the original experience. This is why certain situations seem to provoke irrational or outsized reactions. If you were frequently criticized as a child, a simple suggestion from a coworker might trigger a deep sense of inadequacy. If you experienced betrayal in a past relationship, even harmless behaviors from a new partner might spark feelings of distrust. If you were ignored or dismissed growing up, being interrupted in a conversation might bring an overwhelming sense of frustration or sadness. These reactions are not about the present. They are emotional echoes from the past, replaying themselves over and over again until they are understood and resolved. The first step in breaking free from emotional triggers is awareness. Many people go through life completely unaware of their triggers, simply assuming that their emotional reactions are justified and unavoidable. But the truth is, your emotions are not reality. They are interpretations of reality, shaped by past experiences and internal narratives. The key is to start observing your reactions with curiosity rather than judgment. Each time you experience a strong emotional response, pause and ask yourself, what exactly triggered this reaction? Is my emotional response proportional to the situation, or does it feel amplified? What past experiences might be influencing the way I feel right now? What is the story I am telling myself in this moment? By asking these questions, you create a moment of separation between the trigger and the reaction, allowing you to engage with your emotions rather than being controlled by them. This is the first step toward mastery, shifting from automatic reaction to conscious response. The next step is identifying patterns in your triggers. Emotional triggers are rarely random. They follow patterns, recurring in similar types of situations, relationships, or conversations. For example, you might notice that you feel defensive every time someone questions your choices, or that you withdraw when faced with criticism. You might recognize that certain people consistently provoke a strong emotional response in you, while others do not. By identifying these patterns, you begin to see the invisible emotional scripts that have been shaping your behavior for years, perhaps even decades. Once you recognize these patterns, you can begin the process of rewriting them. One of the most effective techniques for breaking free from emotional triggers is cognitive reframing. This involves consciously shifting the way you interpret a triggering situation, transforming the meaning you assign to it. When you are triggered, your brain automatically generates a story, often a negative one. For example, if someone interrupts you in a conversation, you might immediately think, "They don't respect me." If you don't receive a response to a message, you might assume, "They are ignoring me because they don't care." These automatic interpretations are based on past wounds, not objective reality. Cognitive reframing allows you to challenge these assumptions and consider alternative explanations. Instead of thinking, "They don't respect me," you might reframe it as, "Maybe they were just excited and didn't realize they interrupted." Instead of assuming, "They are ignoring me," you might think, "Maybe they're just busy and haven't had time to respond." This simple shift in perspective can prevent unnecessary emotional distress and help you respond more calmly and rationally. Another powerful tool for managing emotional triggers is self-soothing techniques. When you are triggered, your nervous system goes into fight or flight mode, flooding your body with stress hormones like cortisol and adrenaline. This physiological response makes it nearly impossible to think clearly or respond calmly. The key is to activate your parasympathetic nervous system, the part of your body that promotes relaxation and emotional balance. One of the quickest ways to do this is through controlled breathing. When you feel triggered, try this simple technique. 1. Inhale deeply through your nose for 4 seconds. 2. Hold the breath for 4 seconds. 3. Exhale slowly through your mouth for 6 to 8 seconds. 4. Repeat this cycle for 1 to 2 minutes. This breathing pattern signals to your brain that you are safe, calming your nervous system and reducing the intensity of the emotional reaction. Other effective self-soothing techniques include progressive muscle relaxation, grounding exercises, and visualization techniques. The goal is to create a sense of internal stability, allowing you to respond to triggers with greater emotional control. Finally, emotional intelligence is not just about managing your own triggers. It is also about recognizing and respecting the triggers of others. Just as you have emotional wounds that shape your reactions, so do the people around you. A comment that seems harmless to you might be deeply triggering for someone else. A joke that feels lighthearted to you might bring up painful memories for another person. By developing emotional empathy, you learn to navigate relationships with greater sensitivity and awareness. Instead of dismissing someone's reaction as irrational, you begin to see it as a reflection of their unique experiences and inner world. This shift in perspective allows you to communicate with deeper understanding, build stronger connections, and create an environment of mutual respect and emotional safety. In the end, mastering your emotional triggers is not about suppressing emotions or avoiding difficult situations. It is about gaining the ability to pause, reflect, and respond with intention. Triggers are not weaknesses. They are invitations for growth, opportunities to heal unresolved wounds, and pathways to deeper self-awareness. The moment you stop being controlled by automatic emotional reactions is the moment you reclaim your power. You are no longer at the mercy of past conditioning. You become the author of your emotional experience, choosing how you respond to life rather than being dictated by it. This is true emotional intelligence, not the absence of emotion, but the ability to navigate it with awareness, wisdom, and strength. Chapter 9. Emotional Regulation, the Art of Mastering. Your reactions and staying in control emotions are powerful forces that shape your thoughts, decisions, and relationships. They have the ability to lift you to extraordinary heights or pull you into deep despair. When properly understood and managed, emotions can serve as your greatest allies, fueling motivation, deepening relationships, and helping you navigate life's challenges with resilience. But when left unchecked, they can become a source of turmoil, leading to impulsive decisions, self-sabotage, and unnecessary conflict. This is where emotional regulation becomes critical. Emotional regulation is the ability to manage emotions in a way that aligns with your values and long-term goals, rather than being controlled by fleeting impulses. It is not about suppressing or ignoring emotions, but about developing the skills to respond rather than react. Most people assume that emotional regulation is something that happens naturally, but the truth is, it is a learned skill, one that requires conscious effort and practice. Without emotional regulation, you may find yourself acting on impulse, saying things you later regret, lashing out in frustration, or withdrawing from situations out of fear. Over time, these patterns can damage relationships, limit personal growth, and create unnecessary suffering. However, when you develop the ability to regulate emotions, you gain the power to remain composed in stressful situations, communicate effectively, even under pressure, and make decisions with clarity and wisdom. This skill is not just essential for personal well-being. It is one of the defining traits of emotionally intelligent individuals. The first step in mastering emotional regulation is understanding that emotions are temporary states, not permanent truths. When you experience a strong emotion, whether it is anger, sadness, or anxiety, it often feels like it will last forever. This illusion of permanence leads to overreactions and rash decisions. A person who feels overwhelmed by stress might quit their job in the heat of the moment, only to regret it later. Someone who feels slighted in an argument might say hurtful words that damage a relationship. A person who feels anxious about an upcoming event might convince themselves they are not capable and avoid the challenge entirely. These actions are driven by the false belief that emotions are permanent. However, every emotion, no matter how intense, will pass if given enough time. This is why one of the most powerful tools for emotional regulation is the ability to pause before reacting. Creating a pause between emotion and action allows you to evaluate the situation from a more balanced perspective. When you feel an intense emotional reaction rising within you, practice the 10-10-10 rule. Ask yourself, how will I feel about this decision in 10 minutes? 10 days? 10 years? This simple technique shifts your focus from immediate emotions to long-term consequences, helping you make wiser choices. For example, if you feel the urge to lash out in anger, applying the 10-10-10 rule might help you realize that while your anger feels justified in the moment, it will not serve you in the long run. This mental shift can be the difference between a destructive emotional reaction and a thoughtful, intentional response. Another essential aspect of emotional regulation is understanding the role of physiological responses in shaping emotions. Many people assume that emotions exist purely in the mind, but the reality is that emotions are deeply connected to the body. When you experience stress, your heart rate increases, your muscles tense up, and your breathing becomes shallow. When you feel anxious, your body releases adrenaline, preparing you for a perceived threat. When you feel sad, your energy levels drop and your body becomes sluggish. These physiological reactions reinforce emotional states, making it harder to regulate them. This is why one of the most effective ways to manage emotions is to regulate your physical state first. One of the most powerful techniques for doing this is breath control. Your breath is directly linked to your nervous system, and by changing the way you breathe, you can influence the way you feel. A simple yet highly effective breathing technique is the 4-7-8 method. 1. Inhale deeply through your nose for 4 seconds. 2. Hold the breath for 7 seconds. 3. Exhale slowly through your mouth for 8 seconds. Repeat for 4 cycles. This technique activates the parasympathetic nervous system, which counteracts stress and promotes a sense of calm. By focusing on your breath, you shift your attention away from emotional turmoil and bring yourself back to a state of balance. The beauty of breath control is that it is always available to you. No matter where you are or what situation you are facing, you can use it to regain control over your emotional state. Another powerful method for emotional regulation is cognitive reappraisal, which involves changing the way you interpret a situation to shift your emotional response. The way you feel about an event is not determined by the event itself, but by the meaning you assign to it. For example, if someone criticizes your work, you might initially interpret it as a personal attack, triggering feelings of anger or insecurity. However, if you reframe the criticism as an opportunity to improve, your emotional response shifts from defensiveness to curiosity. This is the power of cognitive reappraisal. It allows you to choose an interpretation that serves you rather than one that harms you. To practice cognitive reappraisal, ask yourself, is my initial interpretation of this situation the only possible explanation? What evidence do I have to support this interpretation? How would a more balanced or positive perspective change the way I feel? By challenging automatic interpretations, you train your brain to respond to situations in a more constructive way. Over time, this practice rewires your neural pathways, making emotional regulation a natural and effortless part of your mindset. In addition to managing emotions in the moment, it is equally important to cultivate habits that promote emotional balance in the long run. One of the most effective ways to do this is through daily mindfulness practice. Mindfulness is the ability to observe your thoughts and emotions without being consumed by them. It teaches you to create space between your feelings and your reactions, allowing you to respond with greater clarity and intention. Research has shown that individuals who practice mindfulness regularly experience lower levels of stress, increased emotional resilience, and greater overall well-being. A simple way to incorporate mindfulness into your daily routine is through mindful observation. Choose a few moments each day to pause and observe your thoughts and emotions without judgment. Notice what you are feeling, acknowledge it, and let it pass without reacting to it. This practice strengthens your ability to remain present and prevents emotions from taking over your decision-making. Ultimately, emotional regulation is about developing the self-awareness, discipline, and techniques needed to navigate emotions with wisdom and control. It is not about suppressing emotions or pretending they do not exist. It is about mastering them so that they work for you rather than against you. When you develop the ability to regulate emotions, you gain the power to stay calm under pressure, communicate with clarity, and make decisions that align with your values. This is emotional intelligence in action, not the absence of emotion, but the ability to harness its power in a way that serves your highest potential. Chapter 10. The Path to emotional mastery, integrating emotional intelligence into daily life. Emotional intelligence is not something you practice once and master forever. It is an ongoing journey, a lifelong commitment to refining how you perceive, process, and respond to emotions, both your own and those of others. True mastery of emotional intelligence is not about occasional moments of self-awareness or rare bursts of empathy. It is about integrating these skills into your daily life so seamlessly that they become second nature. When emotional intelligence becomes a way of being, rather than a skill you try to use, it transforms your relationships, your decision-making, and ultimately, your entire experience of life. To truly integrate emotional intelligence into your daily routine, you must first embrace the reality that emotions are neither your enemies nor your rulers. They are your guides. Many people either suppress their emotions, fearing that they will lead to weakness, or allow emotions to dictate their every decision, letting impulses and moods control their actions. But the real power lies in learning to listen to emotions without being controlled by them. Every emotion carries a message, and your ability to interpret and respond to these messages determines whether you live reactively or intentionally. When you feel anger, it might be signaling a boundary that has been crossed. When you feel sadness, it might be prompting you to reflect on something unresolved. When you feel anxiety, it might be a sign that you need to prepare for something rather than avoid it. Instead of resisting emotions, ask yourself, what is this feeling trying to tell me? One of the most effective ways to ensure that you remain emotionally aware and intentional is by practicing emotional check-ins throughout the day. Most people go through their days on autopilot, rarely stopping to acknowledge their emotional state. This lack of awareness makes it easy to become overwhelmed, irritable, or disconnected without even realizing why. To break this pattern, set specific times during the day, perhaps in the morning, midday, and evening, to pause and ask yourself, what am I feeling right now? What thoughts are contributing to this emotion? Is this feeling serving me, or is it distorting my perception? How do I want to respond to this emotion? These moments of reflection may seem small, but over time, they build a deep sense of emotional mastery. They help you become aware of emotional shifts before they spiral out of control, allowing you to adjust your mindset and actions before emotions dictate them for you. Another powerful way to integrate emotional intelligence into daily life is by developing emotional resilience, the ability to bounce back from setbacks without being consumed by them. No matter how emotionally intelligent you become, life will still present challenges, disappointments, and difficult people. The difference between those who thrive and those who suffer is not whether they experience adversity, but how they respond to it. Emotional resilience is built through a combination of perspective, self-compassion, and adaptability. The first key to resilience is learning to separate temporary emotions from permanent identity. Many people make the mistake of believing that because they feel something strongly in the moment, it defines who they are. When they feel anxious, they say, "I am an anxious person." When they feel rejected, they say, "I am unlovable." When they fail at something, they say, "I am a failure." This pattern is dangerous because it turns passing emotions into fixed identities, making it difficult to move forward. Instead of identifying with emotions, practice reframing them. Instead of saying, "I am anxious," say, "I am experiencing anxiety right now, but it will pass." Instead of, "I am unlovable," say, "I am feeling rejection, but this does not define my worth." By making this shift, you create space between yourself and your emotions, allowing you to process them without being consumed by them. Another crucial component of emotional resilience is self-compassion. Many people are far more understanding and kind toward others than they are toward themselves. When a friend makes a mistake, they offer words of encouragement. When a child struggles, they respond with patience. But when they themselves fall short, they engage in harsh self-criticism, calling themselves failures or believing they are incapable. This lack of self-compassion not only damages emotional well-being, but also weakens emotional intelligence. To truly integrate emotional mastery, you must learn to treat yourself with the same kindness and patience that you would offer a loved one. One simple but powerful way to cultivate self-compassion is through self-talk transformation. Pay attention to the way you speak to yourself, especially in difficult moments. If you find yourself thinking, "I always mess up," or "I'll never be good enough," pause and ask yourself, "Would I say this to someone I care about?" If the answer is no, reframe it in a way that is supportive rather than destructive. Instead of, "I always fail," say, "I am still learning, and every mistake is helping me grow." Instead of, "I'm not good enough," say, "I am doing my best, and my worth is not defined by this moment." This shift in language creates a foundation of self-respect and emotional balance. Beyond managing emotions within yourself, true emotional intelligence is also about applying these skills to your interactions with others. The way you manage your emotions directly impacts your relationships, and mastering emotional intelligence means understanding how to navigate emotions in social settings with awareness and grace. One of the most important aspects of this is empathic communication, the ability to truly understand and connect with the emotions of others. Empathic communication starts with listening, not just to words, but to the emotions behind them. Many conversations are filled with people waiting for their turn to speak rather than truly hearing each other. When someone expresses frustration, they are often not just looking for a solution. They want to feel heard and understood. When someone shares a concern, they are often not looking for immediate advice. They want validation. By learning to listen with presence and intention, you transform your relationships from surface-level interactions to deep, meaningful connections. One of the most powerful ways to practice empathic communication is through reflective listening. When someone shares something important with you, respond by summarizing what they said and acknowledging their emotions before offering any advice or opinions. For example, if a friend says, "I feel like no one at work values my ideas," instead of immediately offering solutions, try saying, "It sounds like you're feeling overlooked and unappreciated, and that's really frustrating." This simple act of mirroring emotions creates instant connection and trust, making the other person feel truly heard. Finally, integrating emotional intelligence into daily life means committing to lifelong growth. Emotional mastery is not something you achieve once and never revisit. It is something you cultivate every day through self-awareness, conscious choices, and intentional actions. There will be moments where you fall short, where you react impulsively, where you struggle with difficult emotions. But every misstep is an opportunity to learn, adjust, and move forward with greater wisdom. The path to emotional intelligence is not about perfection. It is about progress. It is about becoming just a little more self-aware, a little more mindful, a little more empathetic with each passing day. It is about recognizing that emotional intelligence is not a destination, but a way of moving through the world, one that leads to deeper relationships, greater resilience, and a life of authenticity and emotional freedom. And that journey, if embraced fully, has the power to change everything. Chapter 11. The Power of Knowing Yourself. Why self-awareness is the cornerstone of emotional intelligence. Have you ever stopped to question whether you truly know yourself? Not just your likes and dislikes, your habits or routines, but the deeper aspects of who you are, your core beliefs, your emotional patterns, the subconscious forces that drive your decisions, the stories you tell yourself about your worth, your abilities, and your place in the world. The reality is that most people are strangers to themselves, moving through life unaware of the internal forces shaping their every thought, reaction, and interaction. They assume they are in control, but in truth, they are often operating on autopilot, influenced by emotions and experiences they have never taken the time to examine. And this lack of self-awareness creates a life of reactivity rather than intentionality, where emotions dictate choices, past wounds shape relationships, and blind spots limit growth. Self-awareness is the foundation upon which emotional intelligence is built. Without it, no amount of emotional regulation, empathy, or social skill can truly be effective. It is the ability to observe yourself objectively, to recognize what you are feeling, why you are feeling it, and how those emotions influence your actions. It is the skill that allows you to step outside of yourself and analyze your thoughts and behaviors without being consumed by them. And yet, despite its profound impact on success, happiness, and well-being, it remains one of the most overlooked and underdeveloped skills in modern society. Research shows that while nearly everyone believes they are self-aware, only a small fraction, roughly 10 to 15% of people, actually are. This means that most of us believe we understand ourselves far better than we truly do, living under illusions that prevent us from seeing our true nature, our deepest motivations, and the emotional patterns that control us. To cultivate self-awareness, the first step is to understand that your perception of reality is often filtered through layers of bias, emotional conditioning, and past experiences. The way you interpret situations, the way you respond to criticism, the way you react to conflict, these are not purely logical processes. They are shaped by deeply ingrained mental frameworks that have been constructed over years, often without your conscious awareness. If you have ever found yourself reacting irrationally to a seemingly small event, feeling intense emotions without fully understanding why, or repeating the same self-sabotaging behaviors despite knowing they don't serve you, then you have experienced firsthand the power of unconscious emotional patterns. And breaking free from these patterns requires more than just self-reflection. It requires a willingness to challenge what you think you know about yourself. One of the most powerful ways to deepen self-awareness is to examine your emotional triggers. Emotional triggers are situations, words, or interactions that provoke a disproportionate emotional response, often rooted in past experiences rather than the present moment. These triggers serve as windows into unresolved emotions, limiting beliefs, and subconscious fears that shape your behavior in ways you may not even realize. Have you ever felt a sudden wave of anger when someone offers unsolicited advice? Have you ever experienced overwhelming anxiety in situations where others seem completely at ease? Have you ever felt instantly defensive when receiving feedback, even when it is given with kindness? These reactions are often not about the present moment at all. They are echoes of past wounds, learned responses from childhood, or deeply ingrained fears about failure, rejection, or inadequacy. To uncover your emotional triggers, start by reflecting on moments when you experienced a strong emotional reaction that felt out of proportion to the actual situation. Identify what specifically triggered that response. Was it a certain phrase, a tone of voice, a specific kind of interaction? Then ask yourself, what is this reaction protecting me from? What belief about myself is being challenged in this moment? If criticism makes you defensive, perhaps it is because deep down, you equate criticism with failure. If rejection devastates you, perhaps you carry a subconscious belief that your worth is dependent on others' approval. If conflict makes you anxious, perhaps you grew up in an environment where disagreement felt unsafe. These patterns are not random. They are learned, and because they are learned, they can also be unlearned. But self-awareness is not just about understanding your emotional triggers. It is also about recognizing the narratives you have created about yourself and questioning whether they are actually true. Every person carries an internal script, a set of beliefs about who they are, what they are capable of, and how the world perceives them. These narratives shape self-esteem, confidence, relationships, and decision-making, often without us realizing it. Perhaps you believe you are not good at relationships because of a past heartbreak. Perhaps you tell yourself you are not smart enough because of a failure that left a lasting imprint. Perhaps you believe you are not worthy of success because of an experience where you were made to feel small. But these are not facts, they are stories, and the problem is that most people accept them as reality without ever challenging them. To rewrite these narratives, begin by paying attention to the language you use when you talk about yourself. Do you say things like, "I always mess up," "I'll never be successful," or "I'm just bad at that"? These statements are not truths, they are assumptions. Instead of saying, "I always fail," reframe it as, "I am learning from every experience." Instead of saying, "I'm bad at relationships," shift it to, "I am developing healthier relationship skills every day." This is not about blind optimism. It is about recognizing that your beliefs shape your reality. And if you continue to reinforce negative narratives, they will dictate your future. A powerful tool for deepening self-awareness is journaling. Writing down your thoughts, emotions, and experiences forces you to slow down and examine them with greater clarity. Most people operate with a stream of unchecked thoughts running in the background, never stopping to question where those thoughts come from or whether they are even true. But when you put them on paper, you begin to notice patterns, recurring themes, and subconscious beliefs that you may not have recognized otherwise. The key is to ask the right questions. What emotions did I experience today, and what triggered them? What patterns do I see in my reactions and behaviors? What limiting beliefs am I holding on to? What am I avoiding facing about myself? Over time, this practice cultivates a level of self-awareness that allows you to consciously choose your emotions and actions, rather than being controlled by them. Ultimately, self-awareness is the difference between living a life of reaction and living a life of intention. It is about understanding why you think, feel, and act the way you do, so that you can make conscious, empowered choices rather than being driven by hidden fears, outdated beliefs, or unresolved emotions. It is about stepping into the role of the observer, seeing yourself with clarity and objectivity, and deciding who you truly want to be. And the more you cultivate this awareness, the more control you gain over your emotions, your relationships, and your destiny. Because the truth is, you cannot change what you do not first understand. And once you truly understand yourself, everything else in your life begins to change. Chapter 12. Breaking through blind spots, uncovering the hidden aspects of your personality. Self-awareness is not just about understanding what you consciously know about yourself. It is about uncovering what you don't know. The greatest obstacles to personal growth are not the flaws or limitations we can see, but rather the ones we are blind to. These blind spots, aspects of our personality, behaviors, and emotions that we fail to recognize, can dictate our lives in ways we do not even realize. They influence the way we interact with others, how we respond to stress, how we pursue goals, and even how we sabotage our own success. But because they exist outside our conscious awareness, we often blame external circumstances for the challenges they create, repeating the same patterns over and over again without ever questioning the real cause. Imagine driving a car with a blind spot so large that you keep getting into accidents, yet you continue to assume that it's just bad luck. You never realize that the issue isn't external. It's your failure to see what's in front of you. This is exactly how emotional and behavioral blind spots operate. They create patterns of frustration, disappointment, and stagnation, leaving us wondering why things never seem to change, why relationships feel strained, why success feels just out of reach. But once you identify a blind spot, everything shifts. What once seemed like an insurmountable obstacle suddenly becomes something you can navigate with intention. Instead of feeling powerless, you gain control. Instead of repeating old patterns, you make new choices. And the key to uncovering these blind spots lies in the willingness to look beyond your current perception of yourself. One of the most effective ways to identify blind spots is to examine repeated struggles in your life. Patterns are not coincidences. If the same type of conflict keeps arising in your relationships, if you continually feel stuck in your career, if you find yourself triggered by similar situations time and time again, there is a deeper reason. These recurring challenges act as signals, pointing toward an underlying belief, fear, or behavior that you may not be fully aware of. Ask yourself, what problems seem to follow me no matter where I go? What feedback do I receive from others that I tend to dismiss or ignore? What excuses do I repeatedly make for myself? For example, if you often feel undervalued at work, you might assume that your managers simply fail to recognize your worth. But what if the real issue is that you struggle to advocate for yourself? If you repeatedly find yourself in relationships where you feel unappreciated, you might believe that you just attract the wrong people. But what if the deeper truth is that you have a pattern of tolerating behaviors that don't align with your needs? If you frequently experience feelings of self-doubt, you might think that you're just not as capable as others. But what if you have a blind spot around the way you internalize failure, allowing past mistakes to define your self-worth? The stories we tell ourselves about these patterns often reinforce the very behaviors that keep us stuck. But when we shift our perspective and ask, what am I not seeing about myself? We begin to break free from these cycles. Another powerful tool for identifying blind spots is seeking honest external feedback. Because we are so deeply immersed in our own thought processes, we often lack the ability to see ourselves objectively. Others, however, see us in ways that we cannot see ourselves. This is why outside perspectives, whether from trusted friends, mentors, or even professional coaches, are invaluable in developing self-awareness. But here's the challenge. Most people struggle to accept feedback that contradicts their self-image. When confronted with perspectives that challenge our view of ourselves, our instinct is often to become defensive, to dismiss the feedback as inaccurate, or to justify our behavior rather than examining it. But real growth requires leaning into discomfort, recognizing that the feedback we resist most is often the feedback we need most. If you want to uncover hidden aspects of yourself, ask those closest to you. What is something about me that you think I don't see? What do you notice about my patterns in relationships, work, or emotions? What are some ways I might be holding myself back? The key is not just to ask these questions, but to listen without defensiveness. This does not mean that all feedback will be accurate. People's perspectives are shaped by their own biases. But if multiple people highlight the same tendencies, it's worth exploring. Often, the traits that create the greatest challenges in our lives are the ones we are least willing to acknowledge. In addition to external feedback, self-reflection through deep questioning is an essential tool for uncovering blind spots. Many of the beliefs and assumptions that shape our behavior were formed in childhood and reinforced throughout life without ever being examined. We develop core beliefs about success, relationships, emotions, and self-worth based on our earliest experiences, and these beliefs become the invisible framework through which we see the world. But just because a belief was formed in the past does not mean it is true or useful in the present. One of the most effective ways to reveal blind spots is to challenge deeply held assumptions by asking, what do I believe about myself that I have never questioned? What do I assume to be true about the way the world works? What fears or insecurities dictate my decisions, even in subtle ways? Where in my life do I feel stuck, and what role am I playing in that stagnation? For example, if you grew up in an environment where emotional expression was seen as a sign of weakness, you may unconsciously suppress your emotions in adulthood, believing that vulnerability is unsafe. If you were taught that success requires constant struggle, you may have a blind spot around allowing yourself to experience ease or joy in your work. If you internalize the belief that you must always put others' needs before your own, you may struggle with setting boundaries, even when it leads to exhaustion or resentment. These blind spots shape everything from our career choices to our communication styles, from the way we handle conflict to the way we pursue happiness. But once we shine a light on them, we gain the power to rewrite the narratives that have been running our lives. Ultimately, uncovering blind spots is about developing radical honesty with yourself. It is about being willing to see the parts of yourself that you might have avoided, to acknowledge that your struggles are not just the result of external circumstances, but also of internal patterns that you have the power to change. This kind of self-exploration is not easy. It requires discomfort, humility, and a willingness to sit with truths that may be difficult to face. But it is also the key to freedom. Because when you see yourself clearly, when you break through the illusions that have held you back, when you finally recognize the patterns that have been shaping your life, you are no longer controlled by them. You gain the ability to choose, to grow, to transform. And that is the essence of true self-awareness, not just seeing who you have been, but consciously deciding who you want to become. Chapter 13. Emotional Triggers, Turning Your Reactions into Powerful Insights. One of the most revealing aspects of self-awareness is the ability to recognize and understand your emotional triggers. Those moments when you react intensely to something and feel a surge of emotion that seems almost automatic. Triggers are not random. They are deeply connected to unresolved emotions, past experiences, and core beliefs, and they provide some of the clearest windows into the subconscious forces that shape your behavior. Most people go through life believing that their emotional reactions are justified, that the external world is responsible for how they feel. But the truth is, your emotional triggers reveal more about you than they do about the situation that provoked them. When you feel an overwhelming reaction to something, anger, sadness, defensiveness, anxiety, it is rarely just about the present moment. It is about something deeper, something unresolved, something within you that is asking to be seen. The challenge is that emotional triggers happen fast. One moment you feel fine, the next you are consumed by frustration, insecurity, or hurt. Your mind races to explain the reaction, often blaming the situation or the other person involved. But if you stop and look beyond the immediate event, you will find a pattern, a thread that connects this reaction to past experiences, ingrained fears, or unconscious beliefs. The key to mastering emotional intelligence is not to suppress these reactions, but to use them as valuable data, as insights that can help you understand yourself at a deeper level. To begin this process, start by noticing when you feel emotionally overwhelmed. What situations trigger the strongest reactions in you? When do you feel instantly defensive, anxious, or upset? Pay close attention to the moments when you feel disproportionate emotions compared to the actual situation. For example, if someone gives you constructive criticism and you immediately feel hurt or angry, the intensity of that reaction is likely not just about their words. It may be tied to an underlying fear of failure, a past experience of harsh judgment, or a deep-seated belief that you are never good enough. If a friend cancels plans and you feel intense rejection, the reaction may not be about this specific event, but rather an old wound related to abandonment or self-worth. If someone interrupts you in conversation and you feel a wave of resentment, the emotion might stem from past experiences where you felt ignored or unheard. These reactions are not just emotional. They are clues, pointing to areas of your inner world that need attention and healing. Once you recognize a trigger, the next step is to pause before reacting. In the heat of the moment, your brain is wired to respond based on past conditioning, meaning you will instinctively default to familiar patterns, lashing out, withdrawing, shutting down, or over-explaining yourself. But when you pause, even for a few seconds, you create space between the stimulus and your response. You shift from reacting automatically to responding intentionally. This is where true emotional intelligence begins. Instead of allowing your emotions to dictate your actions, you take control by asking, what is this reaction really about? What deeper belief, fear, or past experience is being triggered here? For example, if a coworker challenges your idea in a meeting and you feel defensive, take a moment to reflect before responding. Ask yourself, am I reacting to the actual situation? Or is this tapping into a deeper insecurity about my abilities? Am I feeling dismissed because of this person's words, or because I have a personal history of feeling unheard? This level of self-examination allows you to separate the present from the past, ensuring that you respond based on the reality of the moment, rather than unresolved emotions from previous experiences. But recognizing triggers is only part of the process. The real transformation happens when you begin to trace them back to their root cause. Every emotional trigger has an origin, a past experience, a learned belief, a childhood pattern that shaped the way you react today. To uncover this root, reflect on the earliest memories connected to this emotion. Ask yourself, when was the first time I remember feeling this way? What experiences in my past might have reinforced this reaction? How has this belief or fear shaped the way I move through the world? Often, these roots go back much further than we expect. A fear of rejection may stem from childhood experiences where love and approval felt conditional. A deep need to prove yourself might be tied to growing up in an environment where validation was rare. An intense reaction to criticism may be linked to past experiences where failure was met with punishment rather than growth. These patterns do not appear overnight. They are built over years, sometimes decades, and unless we consciously examine them, they continue to shape our emotions and behaviors well into adulthood. One of the most effective ways to work through emotional triggers is inner dialogue and self-compassion. When you uncover a trigger, do not judge yourself for it. Explore it with curiosity and kindness. Instead of thinking, why do I always overreact? Shift your mindset to, what is this reaction trying to teach me? Imagine you are speaking to a younger version of yourself, the part of you that first learned this emotional response. What would you say to reassure that part of yourself? If your trigger stems from a past fear of rejection, remind yourself that you are worthy, regardless of others' opinions. If your trigger is tied to feeling unheard, affirm that your voice matters, even if not everyone validates it. This process of reparenting yourself, of giving yourself the understanding and reassurance that you may not have received in the past, is one of the most powerful ways to dissolve old emotional patterns and cultivate a healthier relationship with your emotions. Another crucial practice in managing triggers is mindfulness, developing the ability to observe your emotions without becoming consumed by them. When a trigger arises, instead of getting lost in the emotion, practice stepping back and watching it as an observer. Imagine your emotions as waves in the ocean, temporary, ever-changing, not something you have to fight, but something you can allow to rise and fall. The more you practice this level of self-awareness, the more control you gain over your emotional responses. Instead of being pulled into every emotional storm, you become the calm in the center, fully aware of what is happening, but not controlled by it. Ultimately, emotional triggers are not something to be feared or avoided. They are powerful opportunities for self-discovery and growth. They show you where your deepest wounds are, where your subconscious beliefs are shaping your actions, where your past is still influencing your present. When you learn to see them not as weaknesses but as guides, you transform them from sources of frustration into tools for profound self-awareness. And as you gain mastery over your emotional reactions, you step into a new level of emotional intelligence, one where you are no longer at the mercy of your past, no longer reacting unconsciously, but instead responding with intention, clarity, and self-empowerment. Chapter 13. The Lifelong Journey of Self-Awareness, Cultivating Deep, Lasting Growth. The pursuit of self-awareness is not a one-time achievement, nor is it a destination you eventually reach and declare complete. It is a continuous, lifelong process, one that deepens over time, evolving as you evolve. True self-awareness is not about simply identifying your emotions, your blind spots, or your triggers. It is about integrating this understanding into daily life, using it as a foundation for meaningful personal growth, healthier relationships, and a greater sense of purpose. The difference between those who make lasting transformations and those who remain stuck in their old patterns is the ability to commit to self-awareness as a daily practice rather than an occasional insight. One of the greatest misconceptions about self-awareness is that once you uncover a certain truth about yourself, the work is done. You may have a breakthrough realization about a deep-seated fear, an ingrained behavioral pattern, or an emotional trigger, and for a moment, everything makes sense. But self-awareness is not just about recognizing these aspects of yourself. It is about continuously engaging with them, questioning them, and reshaping them as you grow. It is about staying present with your own evolution, understanding that the person you were a year ago is different from who you are today, and the person you are today will not be the same as the one you will become in the future. Growth is fluid, and so too must be your awareness of yourself. To truly cultivate deep and lasting self-awareness, you must adopt practices that allow you to check in with yourself regularly, not just when you are facing challenges or emotional struggles. One of the most effective ways to do this is through intentional self-reflection. Many people move through life reacting to circumstances rather than examining them. They get caught in the momentum of daily responsibilities, distractions, and external influences, rarely pausing to ask, why am I making these choices? How do I actually feel about my current path? Are my actions aligned with my values, or am I operating on autopilot? To make self-reflection a consistent part of your life, set aside dedicated time for introspection. This does not mean you must spend hours in deep thought every day. Even a few moments of intentional reflection, whether through journaling, meditation, or thoughtful conversations, can have a profound impact on your self-awareness. Journaling, in particular, is a powerful tool because it allows you to track patterns in your thoughts, emotions, and behaviors over time. Writing about your experiences forces you to slow down and articulate what is happening within you, providing clarity that is often lost in the rapid pace of daily life. When journaling, ask yourself questions that prompt deeper thinking. What emotions stood out to me today, and why? What lessons have I been avoiding? What are the recurring themes in my challenges? What am I pretending not to know about myself? The more honest and vulnerable you allow yourself to be in this process, the more valuable the insights will be. Beyond self-reflection, another essential component of maintaining self-awareness is seeking continual feedback from others. While self-examination is crucial, there are always aspects of yourself that you cannot see alone. Just as a mirror allows you to see your physical appearance, feedback from others provides a reflection of how your behaviors, words, and energy impact those around you. However, receiving feedback requires a level of humility that many struggle with. The natural tendency when faced with constructive feedback is to become defensive, to rationalize or justify your actions, or to dismiss perspectives that challenge your self-image. But true growth requires openness, the willingness to hear uncomfortable truths, the ability to separate personal ego from valuable insight, and the courage to explore aspects of yourself that may be difficult to confront. To effectively use external feedback for self-awareness, seek out people whose opinions you respect, mentors, close friends, or individuals who demonstrate emotional intelligence themselves. Ask them specific questions rather than general ones. Instead of simply saying, "What do you think about me?" ask, "What patterns do you notice in how I handle challenges? How do you experience me in conversations? Do I listen well, or do I tend to dominate discussions? What are some blind spots you think I might have?" The key is not just in asking, but in listening. Absorb the feedback without immediately reacting. Even if something feels inaccurate, resist the urge to argue. Instead, reflect on it later with an open mind. You may find that even the feedback you initially disagree with contains valuable insights upon further reflection. Beyond reflection and feedback, another vital element in deepening self-awareness is actively challenging your own beliefs and assumptions. Many people go through life operating within the limits of their existing beliefs, rarely questioning the mental frameworks they have built over time. But self-awareness requires a willingness to disrupt your own thinking, to examine why you believe what you believe, and to consider alternative perspectives. What assumptions do you hold about yourself, relationships, success, failure, and happiness? Where did these beliefs originate? Have they been shaped by past experiences, societal expectations, or inherited conditioning? Are they serving you, or are they keeping you confined within certain limitations? The more you challenge your beliefs, the more you expand your self-awareness and allow yourself to grow beyond old narratives. Finally, one of the most overlooked yet powerful aspects of sustaining self-awareness is practicing radical self-honesty while balancing it with self-compassion. Many people either avoid self-examination altogether or engage in it with harsh self-judgment. But true self-awareness is not about criticizing yourself into change. It is about understanding yourself with both honesty and kindness. It is about seeing your flaws and strengths with equal clarity, recognizing your past mistakes without letting them define you, and embracing your full complexity without shame. When you hold yourself to the standard of honesty, but temper it with compassion, you create an internal environment where real growth can flourish. Ultimately, self-awareness is not about perfection. It is about evolution. It is about continually refining your understanding of yourself, questioning your behaviors and motivations, and remaining open to growth at every stage of life. The more deeply you know yourself, the more intentional you become in every aspect of life. Your relationships become richer. Your decisions become clearer. Your emotions become more manageable, and your sense of purpose becomes stronger. And perhaps most importantly, self-awareness allows you to cultivate authenticity, to live in alignment with who you truly are, rather than who you think you are supposed to be. In a world that constantly pulls us toward external distractions, social pressures, and reactive living, developing deep self-awareness is a radical act of self-liberation. It grants you the power to navigate life with wisdom rather than impulse, with clarity rather than confusion, with self-trust rather than self-doubt. It transforms your experiences from something that simply happens to you into something you actively shape. And while the journey of self-awareness is never complete, every step taken brings you closer to a life of greater purpose, deeper fulfillment, and an unshakable connection with yourself.